From the Times Center in New York City, City University Television, in association with the New York Times, presents a Times Talk series with editors and writers of the New York Times. Today's presentation, a conversation with Colin Firth, Times interviewer Janet Maslin.
Good evening. I'm Carol Olson Day of the New York Times, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this exciting Times Talks at the Times Center, the home for live events from the New York Times. Tonight's guest is one of today's most accomplished and versatile actors. The many characters he has created for film, TV, and stage are exceptional for their emotional range and diversity. He's currently starring in Tom Ford's highly acclaimed film, A Single Man, for which he won the Best Actor award at the Venice Film Festival, as well as many Film Critics Circle Awards from across the U.S., and for which he has been nominated for a Golden Globe Award, a Screen Actors Guild Award, the London Critics Circle Award, and many others. In the New York Times review of the film, Manohla Dargis said that, as the single man of the title, tonight's guest plays with a magnificent depth of feeling. You'll hear much more about him and the film in just a moment from our moderator. Book and movie lovers everywhere know her byline. In 1977, she joined the Times as a film critic and spent the next 20 years guiding us with her insightful reviews. For the past 10 years, she has been shedding light on books as our daily book critic. She's also the president of the board of directors of the Jacob Burns Film Center in Pleasantville, New York. Please join me in welcoming tonight's moderator, Janet Maslin, and our very special guest, Colin Firth.
It turns out that if anybody in this audience would like to buy a 2010 Colin Firth calendar, and I have a feeling that we have people who would, if you look on Amazon, they begin at $125. And they're just, I think, just 12 headshots of you.
Wow.
How would you, what's that, what's that about?
That means I'm worth $10 per month. I don't know. It's nothing to do with me. I'm missing a financial opportunity.
Did you know? Did you know about this?
No.
Okay.
No, but thank you for the information. I'll be contacting my people.
Some of this owes something to the fact that you have lately been going around absolutely beautifully turned out, and as you are in A Single Man. Are you now in a Tom Ford wardrobe? Okay.
I wanted to tell you it was Sears. I'd be looking a gift horse in the mouth, you know, if I questioned an offer to be dressed by somebody as accomplished as Tom Ford. Really, you know, I have a lot of engagements in which, you know, I have to be seen, and actors are notoriously bad dressers. I mean, certainly English actors are. We really don't know what to do when we don't have a script and a character and a dresser and a costume designer, and you know, most of the time we don't, and so we're not quite sure who to appear as when we walk out of our front door.
A film that you made not long ago called Easy Virtue, based on a Noel Coward play, and in it you appear kind of the way most of us remember you looking until you met Tom Ford. So how did you get from there to here?
Noel Coward wrote that play in, I think, 1924. It was one of his very early plays. And the first person to make, and last, I think, person to make a film of it was Hitchcock, which most people wouldn't be aware of. It was in 1929, it was a silent film, which seems somewhat inconsistent, you know, when you think of Noel Coward. Yes, quite. You know, like, you take one of the greatest, you know, purveyors of the bon mot and make it silent. But he no, that character's debonair and dapper and well put together, and I just came in and I thought, no. I just thought it would be much more interesting to just unthread him and create someone who had gone feral in his own family.
So did you really did put together?
I did. No, I walked in. I went into costume fittings and I looked at the bow ties and the sleek lines and all the rest of it, and said, no, I think no ties. I want scarves, and I think he should be a chain smoker, and I think we should have stubble. And it was one of those things you look at a story with the benefit of historical hindsight, and it was within 10 years of the First World War, which had basically shattered a generation. And here was a family with great cultural pretenses, and they were doing what the English have been doing for at least 100 years, which is pretending they are an imperial force, which they have long not been. And I think this film encapsulated that. I don't think Noel Coward was conscious of that when he was writing it. I think he was too close to it all in a way. He wrote, 5 years after the war. But I just felt, this is a man who must have been through the war, and I think he's been destroyed by it, and he's given up on the pretense.
The character is called Mr. Whitaker.
Yes.
And when one looks at the characters you've played, there are kind of two categories that jump out. There are the Misters. There's Mr. Whitaker. There's another Mr. who we'll get to later. And then there's this list. King George VI, Lord Henry Wotton, Aurelius, Johannes Vermeer, Dr. Wilhelm Stuckert, William Shakespeare, and Lord Wessex. Do you see any kind of typecasting in either one of those things?
No, well, no, I could probably distinguish between most of those.
I'm just saying that until now, there were certain kind of roles that you would often be.
Yeah, but King George VI and Johannes Vermeer don't have anything in common, I don't think.
Okay.
I mean, they might.
They have more in common with each other than either of them has with Tom Ford, I would say.
Possibly. No, although I think Johannes Vermeer and Tom Ford are both have people who have great artistic sensibilities. I don't think King George VI had any at all. Aurelius was at least intended to be a man who was just full of testosterone and an inclination to violence. That certainly wasn't George VI, and certainly not me. And I dare say he didn't come across like that in my hands. But no, I don't think so. I think they probably reside in the imagination as figures who you might find in a book.
I'm just saying that you've only once played a guy named Vince.
And I only narrowly got to play him as Vince, really, because he was written in that novel as an Italian-American. This is where the truth lies, yeah. Vince Collins was an Italian-American. And I would have been very happy with the opportunity to play him as an Italian-American, but I was very quickly told by the director, and he was quite right in this, really, that it would be much more useful to bring some of my baggage to the role. And it was the first time I realized that my baggage was inevitable, and that I was going to have to start lugging it around and get used to it and import it into roles which I would much rather have started fresh with. But actually, it was, I don't know, maybe it was just a sign of recognition of inevitability in the world, that one's work isn't just dependent on a fresh start or a clean slate, that actually the history that you bring to things and the things that you're associated with may actually also be instruments that you can use when you're expressing yourself. I mean, the instinct for an actor is to say, I do not acknowledge anything outside the world of this character. The challenge of playing a character